I am Captain Logan, and this is day 246 of Spawn Year. Dear reader, chances are that you have never spent months and months in your own personal hell as I have. And even if you have, and maybe I'll start up a support group when I get home, you probably weren't reading Spawn comics every day. So if you haven't been through an experience like mine, I'd like you to imagine, right now, your own hell. Close your eyes. Okay, don't close your eyes, you won't be able to read the words I'm writing. What can you most imagine least wanting to put yourself through for every single day of an entire year? You have no choice. If you don't do it, you'll be buried alive for all eternity. Okay, you got it? Now remember, you're all alone. No family, no friends, nobody to talk to, and nothing to do except related to the theme of your exile. How long do you imagine it will be before you forget exactly what your old life was like? Before you forget the faces and the voices of the people you love? How long before the lack of intellectual and social stimulation starts to grate on you? Before you start seeing things that aren't there? Before you begin to question everything you ever experienced? How long would you make it before you began to question if you're still the person you were when you left? If your loved ones are even real? If you are even still alive? That is true hell, and what I have been fighting all year, an existence which threatens to strip you of your humanity. With issue 126, Logan touches on the real terror of war and the toll it can take on soldiers. War and its consequences are what led to Major Forsberg's initial incarceration and his psychotic break. He remains a man who is barely a man at all, a terrified lunatic who feels safe trapped in a box and is petrified at the notion of going back out into a world he thinks is filled with deadly things that want to kill him. Spawn frees Forsberg, thinking he's doing the right thing, but Forsberg exists in a paranoid delusion where only fighting, death, and the now soulless victims of war exist. I must admit to being uncertain as to what I'm actually looking at here. Nearly all of these 22 pages are a cryptic chase and battle scene, where the ideas are meant to be more important than what the true reality of the situation is, much like the ambiguity of whether Spawn was really interacting with the ghost of Al Simmons. I think this is all in Forsberg's mind. If I'm right, perhaps the idea is finally showing the reader Forsberg's ongoing hallucinations, so we'll appreciate why he'd rather be dead than free. The idea, spelled out in narration, is that war is hell and hell is a war. The implications of that, I think, are more interesting than the notion itself. If Logan is continuing to try to reason out why Spawn is such an unlikable and unmotivated person, and just now seeing himself for who he is to maybe get past that, this idea might be suggesting that Al had already lost so much humanity and life due to all that fighting, especially for a corrupt and manipulative commanding officer like Forsberg, that he traded one hell for another, was already totally detached, and the damage done to his psyche and soul had already happened prior to being spawnified. That when a man loses himself in violence, he is almost literally touching hell itself, because they're nearly interchangeable. It's a decent commentary on the sacrifices men make to fight for their country, and by extension, the sheer evil of the men who exploit them for their own gain. Although I'm reading into the larger narrative when I say that, this issue actually doesn't touch on Win at all. The only trouble with this is that it directly contradicts the earlier decision Logan made about Spawn's identity, that Al and Spawn are separate entities. If war destroyed Al and then he was made into Spawn, how could Al's soul be the noble, duty-filled man of action we were led to believe he was all those issues ago? Ah, well, I'm probably reading too far into this. Maybe all it's saying is what it's spoon-feeding me. War is hell is war, the end. By the end, Spawn finally helps Forsberg at least in Forsberg's eyes, by reluctantly giving him what he wants. In the crazy, probably fantasy version, Spawn shoots him. In the alley, Spawn's not holding a gun, so I have no idea how Forsberg really dies or how much of the zombie battle stuff that we see Spawn sees. The vague ideas about losing humanity in an impossible to process traumatic situation are all this issue really has going for it. It's totally padded in the middle. Read the first 3 pages, then the last 3, and you've read the whole issue. It's sad that Forsberg never comes to the conclusion that hells are sometimes man-made and temporary. No matter how far gone he believed he was, I believe there still may have been hope for him. And this issue is a little cynical if it's saying that Spawn's a hero for putting him out of his misery. But my attitude is somewhat self-motivated. If I allowed myself to see hell the way Forsberg does, I might have done myself in a long time ago. Signed, Captain Logan.